Well, a very significant statement there. That was Field Marshal Tantawi, who is the military leader of Egypt, in effect the man who's leading the military council there. And of course, the man who is the target of lots of the protests that we are seeing over the past few days, and they are continuing this evening with tens of thousands of people gathered in central Cairo demanding faster progress to democracy. And if we just dwell on these pictures for a moment and think about the message that we've heard there from the Field Marshal. He has confirmed the reports that we've been covering this afternoon, namely that the parliamentary elections will go ahead as planned, he says, and of course a significant element coming up within a week, that the presidential elections will take place, and he confirmed it there specifically, by the end of June 2012. We've been reporting that, but that's it. Official confirmation from the Field Marshal that they'll take place by the end of June 2012, so that there can be a new civilian structure of government in place in Egypt from July 2012 onwards. And of course there were several important statements from him too, directly in response to some of the criticisms from the leading protesters and demonstrators, saying that the military council is not interested in power for itself. That's his claim anyway. Some people may have a different view on it, but that's his claim, and that he is as committed to the democratic process as anyone taking part in the protests in the square. So a very, very big attempt by this military council to just take down the temperature, to try and reassure people, and in effect, let's be blunt about it, to get people out of Tahrir Square and go home and not protest anymore. Will it do the trick? Will people believe the Field Marshal? These are very big questions. And we have two guests in the studio who might be able to give us some different perspectives on it. Each of them kindly joining us today with a lot of experience. In the case of His Grace Bishop Angaelos, the General Bishop of the Coptic Church in Britain, we welcome you to the studio. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you. We're also joined by Mohammed Lofty, Amnesty International, a very big and critical report today about the state of human rights in Egypt after the toppling of Mubarak and what's going on there right now. So good to have you both with us. And Bishop, I'm going to ask you for a second if we can hear what Amnesty have got to say, and then I'll bring you straight in and we'll talk about what's going on and what we've just heard there. A quick response first then, Mohammed, on what we've heard from the Field Marshal. Do you believe the assurances? Will people in Egypt believe those assurances today?
Well, I haven't listened to the entire statement, but I wonder if anything was said about the dozens of people who were killed in the last 3 days. Is there any investigation, impartial investigation this time, about those killings, those injuries? Where is the military in this respect? People who have gathered in the last 3 days around Tahrir Square by thousands, in solidarity with those who were injured, and in the 25th of January revolution, who were sitting there camping, asking for their rights, asking for a civilian rule. They were disbanded and their tents were burned down because they were asking for their rights. People have gathered again around them because they think their demands are legitimate. They were met by excessive use of force, by buckshots, shotguns, rubber bullets, excessive use of tear gas, reckless use of ammunition, live ammunition including. Where is the answer to all this? This is why people have gathered in Tahrir Square.
That's understood, and the level of that abuse we've been reporting, as you know, in some detail. I'm just wondering, given that we've just heard that statement from the Field Marshal there, do you think that the plan to bring forward the presidential election, to commit himself, as he said, to the democratic path, will be enough for these people that we're seeing now, many thousands of them, to think we've won the battle, we've won the fight, or will they still be out there demanding more?
Well, I think we will know very shortly if this is sufficient or not, or if people are asking for more than this. From what I listened from some of our contacts, activists in Egypt, they are fed up with the way things are, the interim period is being run. Too many people have been killed in the several protests in the last 9 months. Too many people were presented to military trials for civilians. Prison of conscience continue to lay in imprisoned by military courts. I think the record is grim, and I wonder if one speech is enough to erase all this record.
Well, that's the big question, Mr. Lofty. Thank you for now. Bishop, thank you very much for coming in again, and thank you for waiting patiently. Are you reassured by the message that you've just heard from the Field Marshal? Do you believe him when he says that he's committed to the democratic path and that the presidential election will take place before the end of June?
Well, I think that I, as long as every other Egyptian, would like to believe him. Because I think what happened in January was a turning point in Egypt's contemporary history. The problem is that what has been said over the past 10 months and what we see happening are two very different things. And this isn't the first time we've seen the army becoming aggressive. When we spoke out against the army's attack on innocent demonstrators in Maspero just under 2 months ago, it wasn't just as Christians, it was as Egyptians. And it was a sign of what was to come. I hope that there is a transition, because Egypt is a wonderful country with wonderful people, Christians and Muslims, who deserve to live in peace and who deserve to have a very good future together. And unless there is a change from the old system that dealt with keeping people apart, if there is an active program of social cohesion, of nation building, of real democracy, and I don't mean a Western exported democracy, I mean a democracy that becomes real for Egypt, then I think if that actually happens, it will be very good.
Have you seen anything in the past 8 months which has given you hope that the way faith communities, not least Christian community in Egypt, are treated is going to improve? Are there signs of differences of approach and attitude which give you cause for hope or not?
The two very positive signs we saw are in January, when Christians, Muslims, Baha'is, atheists, communists, everyone was in Tahrir Square calling for a revolution. You couldn't tell Christian from Muslim. That was very quickly hijacked. We see that again today. You don't know who out there is a Christian or a Muslim. And so it looks like at these pivotal points, people are Egyptians. But the problem is, when the fervor dies down, when we go back to day-to-day living, and when we look at the way the country is being governed or not governed at the moment, that's when the differences flare up again, and then it actually becomes different, because in the past 10 months we've seen more attacks on Christian churches and Christians than we have in the past 3 years.
Why is that?
It's because there's a general breakdown of law and order, and it's not just for Christians, it's for people now almost conducting their own brand of vigilantism. People have bought their own firearms, people are protecting their own properties in the way that they feel suitable and protecting their families, because they feel there's a failure on the part of the state to actually protect them and protect the wider community.
Which raises the question of a very big challenge for, let's say, a new civilian government in July next year, and that's still 6-7 months away, to reimpose the rule of law, and that's not going to be easy given the number of firearms and the way that people have got used to behaving.
Well, the number of firearms, the people who are behaving, the fact that 40,000 prisoners were released from prisons in January, the fact that there is now an anarchic, almost subculture going on. We've been seeing on the screens now all of these wonderful dedicated people in Tahrir Square. What we haven't been seeing is people who are opportunists, who are breaking into nearby homes and businesses and looting. So that is happening at the same time, and I think there really does need to be a very strong and equitable implementation of rule of law, so that all Egyptians feel safe and they're all able to contribute, because one of the biggest crimes since January is the economy has completely fallen. And that means a lot for the top-tier companies in the stock exchange, but it means even more to the poor taxi driver and the workers in hotels and various other utilities that have lost their jobs because tourism, for instance, has fallen.
Just a final thought to both of you, if I may, as my guest, and to you first, Mr. Lofty. I'm just wondering, as we look ahead, the next 8 or 9 months or so until this very big date at the end of June, what for you is important in terms of this military council, or the new National Salvation Government as it's going to be called quite soon? What should that be putting in place in the next 6 or 7 months to make sure that that transition is a good one and a peaceful one?
Our answer as Amnesty International is pretty much ready, because the same recommendations that we made when Mubarak left power, we can almost make them identical. Now, first of all, there's a lift of the state of emergency, reforming the security apparatus, breaking with the habit or the legacy of impunity for the security forces, but also answering people's needs. Millions live in slums, in informal settlements, who worry about every day's bread, and a whole change of economic policies that integrate people's voices and seeks the active participation of the residents of informal settlements and the poor to lift the economy and change this injustice.
That's a very clear economic message. Just in terms of the constitution of this new country too, I'm calling it a new country, and the way that the faith communities, notably in your case Christian community, fit into that, how important will that be?
I think what we need to point out is we don't want to fit in as a faith community, we want to fit in as Egyptians who have equal rights. And so I think these points are not just economic, they're also state of mind, because when you have a country where there is incredible poverty, illiteracy, and a disenfranchisement of people, then they feel disempowered. And that's when radicalism can come in. And that's when people become opposing elements in one community. So I think this idea of constitution, of equity, of empowering people to themselves become active members of the state, that is ideal, and it is the only way ahead.
Bishop Angaelos and Mr. Lofty, very good of you to come in, and thank you both very much for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you very much.